All right, so right off the bat, we're just gonna get right into things by covering some team updates. So love to get into the habit of saying what you did as a team. Emil and I finished our marketing sort of game plan that we're gonna pass on to Zach and Jonathan, and we've done that, and they know kind of what our sort of plan is, and that's just to start them off. And we also started looking at legality issues, starting with the background checks, and then also just 501c3 stuff that we're gonna tackle this week. So that's kind of what's happening. And then right on the tip of the due date as well of what we want to finish this week is come to some sort of conclusion with the student-run healthcare clinics. We've been contacting a bunch of facilities in Pittsburgh and in Baltimore, and we're going to come to a conclusion this week as well. So I'm going to pass on the torch to Zachary. You want to give an update?
Yeah, let me get my phone. I have a note written there. Hold up.
Cool. We'll pass it on to Aditya.
Yeah, so I think we have really some exciting developments. Bobby, Josh, and Jonathan and Zach and I have been just talking over these last couple of weeks, really how we as the coordination team can really manage this, really manage our goals going forward. And a couple of ideas that I got away was that our idea is to split the team up into three groups. The first group is oh yeah, sorry, Jeremy. Yeah, I'm actually happy to. Yeah, sorry, I think I talked about something else. We'll save that for a little bit later. Splitting the team up, but yeah, this week, what I did was I just, talked to a couple of people on the teammates, trying to get some opinions on how to continue effectively, going forward with the coordination team. Josh and I met on last Friday to just draft an extremely rough outline on the 1 week curriculum we were looking into and how we can best manage our resources. And as well as I've been continuing on with the vaccination scheduler. I only had 3 appointments this weekend, but I think that's okay.
Okay, I can talk a bit more now that I have my phone. So Jonathan and I talked yesterday, and we came to a few conclusions. Obviously, we can run by them. We're running them by you right now to see if you agree. So we were talking a bit about marketing online, like Instagram, TikTok, and we kind of came to the conclusion that a lot of big brands are so successful on social media because they have like a brand like that they can basically play off of to promote their product, and we don't really have that. So we thought that the best way, especially considering how we're Pittsburgh local and stuff, is more like in person, more like direct marketing techniques. So we thought about different areas where we could get our name known, and so we were looking at things like YMCA's, community centers, schools. We could like put flyers there. We could talk to people in community centers and schools to like send out an email mentioning us or stuff like that. Specifically, we honed that down to contacting the staff of underprivileged schools in the Pittsburgh area. And we are going to meet on Saturday to look at different schools and see which schools would be good to contact. And then next Saturday, we were planning to meet to draft emails we could send to those schools as well as flyers. Yeah.
All right, I can go. Basically, in addition to everything Jeremy said, one thing that we did was we worked on social media planning and what our specific audiences would be for certain social media platforms, what our messages would be on those platforms. And we kind of kept working on our big planning doc for that. Also, Jeremy and I met with Dr. Young the other day, and she shared with us her presentation that she's going to give at the event, at the COVID webinar event. And so we basically kind of met with, I think, Zach and Jonathan a few days later to discuss what our outline of the event would look like. So yeah, that's getting planned. And we also came up with a marketing plan.
Yeah, and the sent out schedule, we can actually talk about a bit later if everybody can pull up the, it looks kind of crappy, but it's just a white picture on Slack.
Mhm.
And it says week 1, figure out content, split up content. Week 2, post initial advertisements, figure out populations. Do you guys see that?
Yeah, I do see it.
Okay. So what are some initial thoughts on this sort of game plan for the vaccine webinar?
Yeah, I think Jeremy and I talked a little bit yesterday, just some couple of updates just because I missed the Saturday meeting. And, I think what we really have is a really good game plan. But one thing that I do want to make sure, especially with regards to the vaccine hesitancy that we're seeing in the Sewickley, greater Pittsburgh population, is that our goal with this webinar is to alleviate some issues that are, along with vaccine hesitancy. We're trying to educate people. We're trying to bring them awareness that the vaccine is safe. It's something that they can use, and it's something that we all need to use to get out of this pandemic together. And I feel like, the more we would want to delay the progression of this webinar, the more those vaccine hesitant people would be a little bit more stubborn to not getting the vaccine, the more that they would not want to get the vaccine or they would refuse it. So I think it's just something to keep in mind going forward is we really need to find that sweet spot, because we do not want to sacrifice the quality of this webinar, with marketing, with arranging that. But at the same time, we also need to be really careful that we are still sticking in within the time period that is the most effective in doing this.
So Jeremy kind of discussed why the 5-week plan would probably be best. I think that at the pace which our group is moving right now, shortening that time probably would be more detrimental than helpful to the webinar itself, because we did struggle a bit with our 3-week time scheme with our last webinar. And I think we could definitely get more participation if we were to put in the same amount of work we put in for that 3-week, but over a longer period of time. So I think that although I do agree with you, Aditya, that we need to do this, I think that this time span is probably the best one to use moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, because I feel like we're going to need some time for that marketing to really take its effect on the people we're trying to seek out and the people we want to come to this webinar, because we want to get as wide of an audience as possible so that the webinar can have its effect and generate that interest. We want people to learn more about the vaccination process.
Yeah, I actually had a small concern when we were looking at the basically what Dr. Young was going to present, and it was less of a concern with me specifically, but an audience that we're trying to get vaccinated. If you're telling them like, oh, all this bad stuff can still happen, and basically you still have to wear a mask and all that, where it's gonna like looking at the negatives, it's going to make them kind of hesitant. Whereas I feel like we should look at the positives. Once we get a certain portion of the population vaccinated, then we'll be able to do all the stuff. So I feel like to actually get people to, we need to find the compromise between like depressing information and like information that encourages them to get the vaccine, right? So I think that's
So are you saying the purpose of this event should be to get people to sign up with our resources to get a vaccine?
Well, just to get a vaccine in general, it doesn't have to be with our resources, but the way I see it is there is like basically an insane amount of information. So we basically have to choose which information we want to present to them. And I feel like we should choose the information that encourages them to get the vaccine.
All right, I can basically do a quick summary of what we discussed during our last meeting about the outline of the event itself, if everyone's okay with that. So basically how it's going to look is we are going to get on Zoom and we are going to make a quick, not a quick, but a introduction speech for Dr. Young, talk about like the webinar itself, I guess what she's going to be discussing, and then she's going to do her presentation. The outline of that presentation, I'm not going to go into, but basically what you need to know is that it starts with facts about COVID, different treatments that hospitals do, the recovery period of COVID, post-COVID syndrome, and then vaccines. So those are like the 5 main points of that. And after her presentation about the vaccines, we're going to have a little bit of audience engagement through a series of myths that we're going to show like on the screen. Well, this is, subject to change, but this is what we thought was the best option in our last meeting. And the audience will be able to vote whether they think a certain myth is true or false. And Dr. Young will either refute it or support it, saying it's true or false. So it's kind of like a little game thing, learning more about vaccines and why vaccines aren't dangerous, because most of the myths that are harmful are not true. So that's the audience engagement. Then we're going to have a question and answer. So that's kind of the outline of the presentation. And during that meeting, Jeremy and I also talked about having us as a group send takeaways to the audience members before they actually attend the webinar. And these can be in the form of like what we got from the presentation and what we think people should do after they listen to the presentation, because the presentation itself has a lot of facts, kind of some, disheartening facts too, like, vaccines and how they're possibly not fully protecting you from COVID. So we were just thinking that that could be part of our plan to go into the event, before the event, yeah.
Yeah, and we kind of wanted to do that because that lets people, one, get engaged with it, and also it lets people know exactly what we want them to get out of the presentation. So they obviously have that Q&A session that they can utilize, but we also want to frame it. That's why I kind of asked Zach, like, what exactly you think the point of this is. And so that's all we can kind of come up with that. Initially, we have the idea of, yeah, we do want them to take the vaccine. That's one thing. But the main idea, the main goal is just, hey, listen to the CDC, wear your mask, maintain 6 feet. That was kind of our initial goal. But obviously, if we wanted to frame it as, hey, also get your vaccine, we can do that as well. And we can utilize our pre-event takeaways sort of presentation to do that. And also, I'll let that sink in first. Are there any questions about that part of it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess just, I feel like the best way would be to like encourage social distancing, mask wearing, and vaccine taking would be to look at the effects of not doing it, which is obviously COVID. And I feel like a lot of people like undermine how bad it is. Just so like we can like do a lot of comparison, really look deep at the data. Like it doesn't just kill people. A lot of people have these permanent conditions that you don't get with things like the flu. And then look at hard research that proves all the benefits of all these things. That so just basically, I feel like people can kind of hide between a lot of like ambiguity to like not follow protocols that benefit everyone. So
Yeah, that's actually really important because Dr. Young doesn't really have that. So we can probably ask her about it. And if it comes down to it, we can definitely add that sort of thing into the takeaways as well. Just like a tiny little section at the end. I like that idea. So what this sort of setup means for us is we now need to make the pre-event takeaways presentation. We need to build the myths presentation, which should be much easier. And also do one more check of, does this sort of setup work? Go on Zoom, have a rehearsal, do that. So in my kind of mind, this probably means 2 more meetings on like webinar stuff for these 2 ideas. And then we obviously have the big monster that is called marketing. So I personally don't have any initial ideas on this, but how do we accomplish marketing for this webinar event? Or do we want to do that in a separate COVID meeting?
I think we can talk about it right now. So Jonathan and I were talking, and I said this earlier, but I wanted to know what you guys think about it. That we don't think that like Instagram and TikTok are the best way to do things, because like the only way to really get our name out there on Instagram and TikTok would be to spend money, and we don't really have money right now.
I agree. I think the audience will be limited with just Instagram and TikTok. I think that directly reaching out to people, I think personal invitations are always a good way to go. It might be tough for us to do that, but if we target certain groups of people, especially if we want to build a base that we know will come and then spread it out to more people, I think that might also be a good approach.
I personally like the base approach and then target a lot, because sets up kind of outlets that we can utilize over and over again, and we can just send them, hey, check out this, check out that, and it'll all be set up because it's a foundation. And then the cleanup period is where we can directly go and say, hey, by the way, we have this going on, thought you might be interested. So
Yeah,
my initial thoughts.
I think it's also important to like think about why we're trying to involve these people. Like obviously in the short term, our goal is education with this webinar, but we want people who will actually use our services and be basically inspired and have their lives improved. And we want them for more than just one webinar. So I think it's important to get people who will actually do that. And I feel like an important part of that is location. So because we're Pittsburgh based and we're eventually going to be doing stuff in person, I think it's valuable to really look at our marketing resources in Pittsburgh.
Zach, do you have any opening ideas for what might be that base population that we're looking to appeal to the most?
Yeah, so I think that the goal is probably students, like high schoolers, maybe even college students too, maybe even middle schoolers as well. Because I mean, I feel like kids have the most to learn, right? So also we're still changing and evolving, and yeah. So anyway, I think some methods to reach out to them would be community centers and schools, as I said before.
Zach, could I actually just say something? I think Jeremy just put in the Dropbox, but you need to be 16 plus to get the vaccine. So I think, our goal with this vaccine webinar is really to try to get more people to sign up and get vaccinated, try to alleviate some vaccine hesitancy. That's really where our impact would be the greatest. So I think that, doing middle schoolers might not be a good idea because they cannot use the information in our webinar to, continue to, get the vaccine and continue to follow COVID protocols. I think, a population that we should look to target is people who are also hesitant to get the vaccine. And, we see a lot of them with people of color. That thing too.
That's something that's very valuable to consider. However, I don't think, well, I mean, Jeremy was talking about how the goal of this is not just to get people vaccinated. But I think that it would still be valuable to talk to middle schoolers, because middle schoolers tend to just follow whatever their parents believe. And so, like, if their parents don't believe in vaccination, there's probably a higher likelihood that they're gonna grow up to not believe in vaccination. And it's possible that eventually vaccines will be exposed to a younger population, like younger populations will be able to use them. So I think that, like, we shouldn't just cross them out, basically.
I actually agree with Zach.
Zach, I think, sorry, Jeremy, I cut you off.
You got
You
it.
can continue. Yeah, so I just think that, really the idea of the vaccine webinar is to really get some of that impact going. And I agree with you, Zach, that it is always beneficial to target middle schoolers because they listen to their parents. They will be making the decisions. And they listen to whatever their, community members say. But I think we should really have a little bit, and I think including middle schoolers is not it's a pretty good idea. But I think we should really sharpen in on a certain population that we're going to target to make sure that our marketing is the most effective. So I think, instead of doing it, on a quantitative sense, instead of doing it like middle schoolers or high schoolers, do it on more of a qualitative sense. So like, for example, are, people who are more hesitant towards getting vaccinated, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that we should look at where we're going to get the most, I guess, bang for our buck. But I just wanted to introduce the nuance that we shouldn't completely eliminate middle schoolers, like remove the possibility.
Yeah, I think you both make good points in that discussion. But I think one way that we can immediately reach out to high schoolers within at least our school, because obviously I'm not sure what you, Zach, and Jonathan have planned for getting in contact with neighboring schools, but obviously we have weekly announcements that we could get the message out there. We could set up a stand to generate, like, to get names that we could put on an email list or something that we could send out information about this webinar to, and we could set that up, I don't know, either in the commons or outside during the day. And I feel like that would be one way to generate some interest from at least the high school population.
Yeah, and one more thing I wanted to add too. I think, at least, I'm really basing this off, from the results that I got from the survey and the general gist, and of getting the vaccine. And with regards to vaccine hesitancy, I think college students are also another prime example that we can target, because even though there are some campuses that are requiring COVID-19 vaccinations, right now we're seeing the lowest growth among them, with regards to, scheduling vaccine appointments. So I think there's some hesitancy that exists within the college student population, and it might, just be because, they're very busy and it's not like on top of their mind right now. But there's something else I saw. And yeah, Bobby, I think that point that you brought up is pretty good.
Sweet. Yeah, I just want to kind of reiterate or re-bring up the goal of this whole, I know it's titled a vaccine webinar, but I'm kind of in strong argument that we should probably generalize it to just COVID in general, and then urge people to kind of follow CDC guidelines and have it be focused around just in general, hey, this is a dangerous thing, wear your mask, stay socially distanced, as well as obviously try and get them signed up. So I think just generalizing that would be good.
Yeah, and I think the inclusion of all the numbers to show people why these practices provided by the CDC are so important, that would really help get the message across by showing them the facts and figures so they can actually have some legitimate proof and insight to why they should practice these.
Right, definitely. Aditi, do you want to talk about the team thing?
Sure. So I know you guys got a little bit of a glimpse in that earlier today's conversation, but there's been a lot of there's been a good bit of talk going amongst us about really the most efficient to manage the coordination team and just the team as a whole. And really the idea is to divide the current group of students we have into 3 groups. The first group is known as the short-term goals team. And they focus on short-term impacts like creating and organizing the vaccine webinar or the COVID-19 webinar, the vaccine scheduler, or any other short-term goals we want to put out there. And then we have a separate long-term goals team that focuses on the long-term goals that we plan to pursue. And the first idea is creating the curriculum. I think that is definitely the biggest long-term goal that we have. And lastly, I think we have a marketing team that works with both teams to really market ourselves and really make sure that we are trying to hit that area pretty well. And lastly, we plan to have one liaison between the long-term goals team and the short-term goals team, who is rooted in one of those teams, but floats around to the other team to really promote that connection. So I think this way we have these smaller groups to promote, us working more efficiently, getting more things done. But at the same time, we can also connect with other groups and make sure that type of overall engagement is having one of them. I think the liaison is just one person either from the short-term goals team, the long-term goals team, or the marketing team.
What are people's thoughts on that?
I think it's an interesting idea. Yeah, I'd like to see how it goes if you decide to do it.
Yeah, if anyone else really wants to elaborate, try to, if you guys have another idea that we can incorporate within that or something else totally different, we're all open to that too.
Yeah, I would like to say something. I feel like we should keep it pretty mobile. So like instead of narrowing it down to like one liaison, I feel like it should be okay if people want to work and help another team, or even if at one point someone wants to switch teams. I think we should try to keep the boundary pretty like weak, I guess, as in like we should allow, even encourage like mixing of work between the two.
That's kind of what I was going to say. The communication is still important, and keeping up tasks that are even mixed between them. So I think as long as you guys do that, definitely I think it would be interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's really the idea, is that we do want to promote connection among the teams, but at the same time I feel like those how would you say, those pseudo boundaries that we have can give us that psychological sense that, we have a goal, within a small cohort of students, and let's go achieve that specific goals. I think, really trying to engage a goal in our heads is best done, in those smaller groups. But yeah, I think Mila and Zach brought out some pretty important points.
Sweet. This kind of topic will carry on. What will happen for sure is after these 2 weeks, which is kind of our cutoff date from FFU as well. Afterwards, we're going to do another survey round, another check-in round to see how each of you and I am doing at our own goals. And then we'll also, in that survey round, we'll have reflection questions like, how do you think this 2-week or this 8-week sort of experiment went? Did you like how we separated stuff? So we're going to have a bunch of feedback, and it'll let you have a chance to reflect on, what went well during this period, what will you want to improve, and then we'll have better ideas on this idea. But I think it's a good one to kind of just think about. Sweet. We'll call it a day and set up for our recaps. Does anybody else want to just shout out an idea right before we go into that?
I do want
I
to share
understand it's
something
fast.
really.
It's fine. You can go.
All right, sure. Okay. I think I did want to mention something about the vaccine scheduling thing that's been going on. I think right now we've hit a bit of a ceiling with the Strictly Academy population, as well as some of the general smaller pockets of population we have, and that's totally expected. I feel like the people that are still hesitant to getting the vaccine are still hesitant, but the people that are really want to go forward with it have already gotten their first doses and are gonna get their second ones in the next coming days. But I think one thing that I did say is, and I understand our project is going to be mainly focused, on the COVID-19 aspect with, a little bit of the vaccine in there too. But I kind of wanted to package this scheduling idea and the webinar together as a short-term goal. So if people, that sign up for the webinar and they're vaccine hesitant, and let's say they change their mind after the presentation today, or somebody else is trying to look for an appointment for the loved one, I do want to offer this feature to these individuals. So if we can find a way to package those ideas together, that would be pretty good.
Yeah, we could basically do something like, say, like at the end of the presentation, say you've heard all this and you're like, dang, I really want to get my vaccine now. Well, how do you do that? Well, you could use our resources that we have available and get one right away,
Cool, yeah, just like, stick it in within the website we have, maybe just, tell them, hey, visit our website, visit our link, sign up, and one of us will get back to you in 1 to 2 days. Something as simple as that. I just really want to make sure that, our involvement within the community in this short-term goal doesn't just end necessarily at the end of the webinar. We also are trying to put forward and give them an option to help them in another way.
Yeah, I really like that. Plus, it lets us, this is like the rebirthing of our of CFT again. So we're going to have all platforms ready to go, updated completely. So feel free to say, we can implement all our resources on our websites and just tell them, hey, visit this, visit that, visit that. We'll have it all set up.
Cool, yeah. And I think, I think mentioning that a little bit up front too could potentially get a little bit more people to sign up. Those vaccine hesitant people that are still kind of like, should I get it or not? They probably don't want to spend too much time, getting an appointment either. That's also a big aspect that contributes to the vaccine hesitancy is literally how hard it's to get an appointment. So we want to try to also address that too. And especially, I did want to mention one quick thing too, especially among people who are underprivileged or, come from a low income background or a person of color. I think, one of the biggest barriers that divides them from getting the vaccine is that they must schedule an appointment online. Some of these people, might not know how to access a computer or, don't have access to one directly. And I'll tell you one thing. So last week or the week before that, I went to Youngstown to get my vaccine, and there was this old, and this, where I got the vaccine was in a population that was predominantly like lower income, with a higher amount of African American population. So naturally, in that area, they had a lot of slots open. But this guy, he was like a pretty old man, and he just walked up to the counter. He thought he could get like the shot straight up. So he went and asked the pharmacist, and the pharmacist was just like so rude. He was like, you got to schedule it online. So the African American guy said, hey, I don't have access to a computer. I'm old school. I don't know how to, use any of that. And this guy literally just got turned away just for the treatment. But So I know I felt really bad. So I helped them schedule one, right up there. But I think we're gonna see a lot more people in Pittsburgh in the population too. So yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we should offer like help, basically helping schedule and all that. And I have one concern. If it's like an online vaccine webinar, are we gonna get the people who don't know how to use technology?
I think that's a pretty important point. Yeah, that's actually a really strong point to put in. Thanks for bringing that up, Zach. And it's not necessarily using technology, but they just really don't know how to get the resources to schedule the appointment. I think these people can do simple things like opening up an email, opening up a document. Most likely the people that we're gonna send that are gonna open the Zoom link would be younger people too. So if we could get someone, they have like a grandparent or a parent that's living living in a different household and they don't have access to the internet, we could offer them the service too. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Guys, I gotta head out really right now, but it was great talking to you all today. Good stuff.
See ya. Zach, did you want to say something? I saw you on mute at one point.
Well, I texted you about it.
Got it. All right, we're gonna move on to our recap. I'll keep it real short. Thanks a lot, guys, for sticking around. I have something cool to show off. By the way, put the filter on. I guess only Zach can.
Actually, my filter like stopped working because I deleted Zoom and re-downloaded it. I literally it just doesn't work.
Dang. Okay. Oh well. I'm gonna be smart again. All right. I forget how I normally do these. It's been a while. So this week we gave us that was bad. We gave out updates, each team did, and we also planned for the week ahead. Currently, Mila and I are working on making a whole list of conclusions that we're going to draw from our short-term student-run healthcare idea, and we're also going to finish up legality. And then Zach and Jonathan are going to work on marketing and picking out some schools and selecting them. And I know that Bobby, Jonathan, and Aditya are going to be working on, Bobby, Josh, and Aditya are going to be working on the curriculum and not finishing, but working on the course load. And we're also all together, we planned out a whole COVID vaccine webinar event, and we're going to offer out details in the following weeks, but that is coming in approximately, I would say, 6 or 7 weeks. And we're making all these plans up. So that's coming along the way. And then the final thing is after these next 2 weeks, we're going to try something new with our whole team, and then we'll see where it takes us.